So when you talk to us at Lift Orlando about how we're doing what we're doing and the why behind it, a lot of this sort of abstract concepts coming together in new ways fuels it, because the harsh lesson that we've learned in Orlando is that the fact that you may have good intentions to do good, the fact that your heart may desire to improve the lives of others, does not necessarily mean that your work will yield the right outcome. And so the intentionality to sit and listen to these concepts and then figure out how do we connect this in practical, meaningful ways. For us, Phil Hissam and the Polis Institute have served the purpose of sort of being our conscience in the work of Lift Orlando. We're constantly, we might find ourselves raptured in some great new idea for good deeds. He's usually the one who will whisper, "Are you sure the residents are going to think it's a good idea?" Yet that sounds really good, but it may not work out that way. Maybe there's a few tough questions we can ask before we get there. And so to ground all of this in what the practice has looked like, we've asked Phil Hissam to share with us what we learned as we looked at Orlando through the lens of thriving cities. Please give a warm welcome to Phil Hissam.
Thank you, Eddie and Jim and Josh. I'm delighted to be here with you this afternoon. My name is Phil Hissam. I'm the director of the Polis Institute. Polis is the Greek word for city, so think metropolis, and we are a community engagement nonprofit that benefits distressed urban neighborhoods. Research is one of our pillars, so this project really fit in nicely and learned a lot from it. And I'd like to thank Josh and Mr. Senna for their spearheading this effort. I can tell you that my affection for Orlando grew tremendously during this project, which wasn't, they didn't ask for that to happen, that's just what happened, and I'm delighted that that happened. And so much so that when I sent in my first draft, their first comment was like, "It's too exuberant, Phil." And if you know me, you know that I am not known for enthusiasm and exuberance, but I took that as a good sign and proceeded to mute it a little bit, but the actual excitement didn't really settle down any. I just kept growing. So you may hear some of that from me today. And as I look back, there's an interesting milestone in my life that kind of makes that all the sweeter. My undergraduate is in cultural geography, and the first, my first class, nearly the first day, the first textbook, we open up the book. It's a book on place, this nebulous concept, right? And a couple pages in, there's a picture of Orlando. And the caption says, "Orlando, a placeless place." Wow. I couldn't disagree more than that, and I kind of want to find the author and talk to him a little bit. Maybe have Ron talk to him a little bit too, but that might prove his point. But anyway, I think that this idea that we have sort of we're a cultural sort of wasteland, or however you want to say that, is ridiculous. You know, even looking at the origins here of the city and some of the things that have happened, becoming the tourism capital of the country, a lot of just the cultural richness that's here, it's ridiculous. You know, you can go around our city and instantly find out why the 60 million people came here last year. They didn't come here because this was nowhere. They came here because this is an imaginative place, an exciting place, a creative place, a thriving place, which is the answer. I mean, the question that we're exploring here, and a question I was asked to explore in some ways, is Orlando a thriving city? Now that we got a little bit ahead, the cart ahead of the horse, and because as you can tell from Josh's talk, like taking what he just said and turning that into something that you can do. I mean, it's clear, it's a compelling thing, but I don't know, it was hard. Because these are huge concepts. So to kind of make that concrete and answer that question, is Orlando a thriving city, was a big challenge, but that makes it fun. But I'll skip ahead and just tell you that the answer to that question is yes. Absolutely yes. If you drive around this city and didn't come up with that answer, you're not paying attention. If you meet the people that live around the city and the things we're talking about and the things we're doing and don't come up with the answer, yes, we're thriving, you're missing out. You're not paying attention. There's something very, very important happening here, and what it is we're beginning to thrive. And maybe not even beginning, but really to realize and appreciate that we're thriving. Now, that sentiment comes with some qualifications. And I'm going to talk about some of those qualifications because they're important. So our research team went out and tried to answer that question and discover the answer to, are we a thriving city, and what are some of those qualifications? That team was myself, was the overall profile writer and wrote the sections on the good and the beautiful. Phyllis Thompson did the profile review and edit. Jacinta Mathis wrote the section, the first draft of the just and well-ordered and the prosperous. Renee Vasquez wrote the sustainable, and Natalie Hamer wrote the true. Amazing, amazing team. If they could, I think they're all here. If y'all could stand up, I would just want to say thank you. And I would like to say this, if there's something I say about one of these subjects, or if you end up reading the profile and you think that there's something in there that's perhaps a bit contentious or something like that, don't go to them, come to me. Because I took what they wrote, and so the mistakes are mine. Let's put it that way. The great team. And the approach we took was a mixed method approach, so qualitative and quantitative. Often we pick one or the other, and that's a mistake. You need quantitative data to kind of ground and support your qualitative data, but qualitative, that's the world we live in, right? That's the world of subjective experience, and so we need that healthy mixed balance. We had to develop some working definitions. Josh gave us these broad concepts. We had to turn it into something. What Orlando are we talking about? The city, the county, the 4 counties. Geography, we had to pick that. We had to kind of break down these endowments to something. If we're sitting in front of somebody interviewing them, we can't spend our whole time doing what Josh just did, describing it all. We have to say, we're talking about education and kind of get our head in the game. And our approach was this. We wanted to find leading voices. What are they talking about? So we got a list together. In our community, we have people that are leading in our community. What are they saying? And we call those essential subjects. And then we categorize them based on these endowments. So we just said, look, the things we're talking about are sort of at this crossroads of whether we're going to move toward be more of a thriving place or maybe getting kind of subsumed by some of our challenges. And then we supported that with our quantitative data. Okay, this is what our leaders are saying. What's the data say? And then we used certain studies to validate what we found. And we use 4. We use 4 studies to validate this, and they're very, very important. Work in our community, United Ways, Alice report, if you're not familiar with that, it's very important to take a look at, because in that report, they basically identified our main issue, which is our, the challenges from our service sector economy and the low-wage workforce that makes that up and makes it work. And another study was the value study by Central Florida Partnership and Central Florida Foundation. We used that to validate, used their core, their source dilemmas, as they called them. Did that match up with sort of what we found out? And then there were 2 POLA studies that just happened to be going on at the same time. One was the work in this community. So we did 1,500 interviews with people in this very, historically rich community that's been known for problems, but also for some really bright spots in our community. That was a 30,000-hour project. 80 volunteers, 12 people from the community hired and trained to do the leading part of those conversations. An amazing body of not just information, but conversations, really important to what both is thriving and maybe not so much thriving about Orlando. And I'll mention more of that in a minute. And the other study, we just so happened to be invited by one of our fastest growing logistical companies, and they asked us to come in and interview their workforce because they realize we're successful. We give this money from our profits to charity, and we're finding out a lot of our workforce are in the lines of those charities. It's a real problem, right? How do we make that different? So we came in and interviewed their employees, and so that's a great case study. And those 2 projects I mentioned here in this neighborhood and that one with the company just happened to be going on, but they were very informative about this subject we're talking about. So those all validated what we were talking about. For our grounding our work in geography, it's the 4-county metropolitan statistical area of Orlando, the MSA. That's what, when I say Orlando moving forward, I mean that metro area, which includes the 4 counties in the city. And then we had to, one of our key working definitions that we had to come up with, we had to break down what is thriving. I mean, part of what Josh is doing is eventually trying to, have a really a poignant phrase, a descriptive phrase around that, and tools. But we had to start with something because people wanted to know what that was. And we used this definition here in Orlando, where the sum of our past decisions meet the collective hope for the future. So thriving for us was a very dynamic concept. It wasn't just a catalog of information. It was, what have we done? Where has that led us to now? And how is that sort of infringing on or propping up where we want to be? Because like individuals, communities, neighborhoods, cities are going somewhere. So where is that we're going? And are all voices being sort of invited and included in that conversation? And is it something that people agree with? Or will everybody go in a million different directions? That's not really thriving. That's chaos, right? So that was our definition. And the more we went along, I think the more, for me, it proved to be a useful working definition. So our past decisions here in Orlando have led us to having a global brand. Everybody knows about Orlando. Whether they think about it in a placeless place or more positively, that's something that we have to offer. America's leading tourist destination. Undeniable. This is where people come. And that means we are serving the world in a way. And that's something valuable. There's this kind of rub because that's really what our brand is, but there's a lot of us trying to get away from that brand, and for good reason, to diversify and strengthen the economy, but that's who we're known as. And that's not a bad thing. 9th fastest growing city in the U.S. We have had a net gain of 88 people a day for 40 years running. I mean, just take that in for a second. That's a lot of people coming. They're coming here for a reason, not because this is a place without opportunity or hope. It's just the opposite. We're compelling and inviting people here, and that's important. We're the least economically segregated large metro in the U.S. I tell this to people, and they don't quite believe it because we are pretty economically segregated. Just compared to other cities of our size, we're not. And the source for this is a Richard Florida study called Segregated City. That is a huge thing because a segregated city, like a really entrenched segregated city like, let's say, Baltimore, some of the flashpoints of that different worlds we live in are more likely to happen. When we're around people in different walks of life, we have less, there's less of a cause for an eruption because we know who that person is. It's not this sort of kind of suspicious other. It's somebody who lives on the street with us. It's somebody that we interact with. And that is an amazingly important thing, and we have that. But as we grow and diversify our economy like we really want to, the trajectory will be towards entrenching off and being segregated and then trying to pick up the pieces when it erupts. We can lead the country in how to do this right. To me, that's exciting because the country is trying to kind of backtrack. We are at the leading edge of this because we're growing fast and we're still at a place where we're still rubbing shoulders with one another, at least a little bit. Let's protect that, nurture that, and grow that and lead. So our collective hope is genuine opportunity for everyone. So when you look at the Alice study, people that are working a full-time job and succeeding in their work and doing well and are trustworthy and solid employees should not be in poverty, period. And however we got to figure that out, well, we need to figure that out. That's a justice issue, right? And so there's part of that intersection of personal responsibility and corporate responsibility has to come together where there's real, genuine opportunity. In that study of that logistical company I mentioned, half of the employees said they were worried about where they're going to get food on month to month. Most of those were full-time employees. That shouldn't be. But when we asked them, who would you like to address that need in your life, 98% of them, and we interviewed almost every employee, said, I would like to do it myself. I want to provide for my family. I want to have the dignity of being able to work hard, enjoy the fruit of my labor, and take care of my loved ones in my community and be a vibrant element of the city. People want to participate. They don't want a handout. They don't want to be relegated to a sidebar position. And that's a big challenge here because we have this very vibrant service sector economy, and it makes our workforce very vulnerable to fluctuations in the economy. People will get laid off easily. It's easy to get a job, easy to lose a job, and then that kind of spike in need puts our charities and churches kind of not being able, in a position where they're not be able to prepare for that spike in need. So it causes this ripple effect. When if we learn to more creatively share the success along the way, we're not going to have that need on the back end. And that's challenging because this logistical company, I asked them about that, and they said, well, you know, if we raise our standard entry-level wage, we'll lose all our contracts. Well, it's not an easy concept. But at the end of the year, if you have a profit, maybe that's the time to share some of that so that those people are not in vulnerable position. You know what I'm saying? So there's ways to do this that work, and we have to be creative, and we have to invite those who are experiencing the problem to help solve it. So hopefully you picked up on that what Josh was saying. Part of this paradigm shift is you can't sit in a room anymore because it doesn't work. Solve a problem for someone else and have it be sustainable. You got to sit in the room and do the hard work of working it out together. And there are times when you have a little subset that maybe sort that out, a little bit of a nuance, but in general, there has to be, especially those who are experiencing the weight of the problem, need to be a core resource in solving it. And that's what leads to thriving, where it's not you're relegated to sort of receive and being taken care of because we're thriving. No, you're a part of it, and you're going to help make sure it happens because you're going to let us know. What's it really like to work at one of our theme parks and make minimum wage and have 2 other jobs? And then be maybe not looked at with the respect that you deserve. So, thriving is all about decisions. How a city navigates its challenges. And I think there's evidence that we're doing a really good job in that. And again, with some qualifications. So as I kind of round up here, I'm going to go over these subjects, a few of them. I'm going to pick out a few as examples and show how they're related to the endowments that Josh put up. So we had 3 subjects that fell into the sustainable, this idea of our identity, just the physical environment, ecology, and public health. Identity is that one subject that comes up. We're like an insecure teenager. Who am I? Who am I? But it's real for us because we've had this history where we've been known as this theme park world. We know we have more to offer, and people don't see it that way. So we want a cohesive identity. It makes sense. It'll help us attract other companies, large companies who say, yeah, I want to be a part of that, even if they're not attached to tourism. So identity is a huge issue. We're making a lot of progress. The Economic Development Commission, Orlando, you don't know the half of it. And we don't. But you notice that phrase started with Orlando, you don't know the half of it. So there's already a decision there that, like it or not, the world knows us as Orlando. And nothing against, the other brands we have, Orange County, Central Florida, they're the more, they don't resonate with people. Who we are is Orlando. And we have a city, municipality Orlando, but we also are known as this thing called Orlando. And that's what we have to work with. So embracing that and maturing that brand and identity is a part of what we have to offer. I will give you an example of something I overheard at a football game here that was very telling. So you notice you've been to the football games, you get a welcome message from the mayor of the city, Buddy Dyer, and the mayor of the county, Teresa Jacobs. So it's like, welcome to Orlando, and it's a very nice little video, and then right after Buddy's comes Teresa's. And I was sitting behind these people from out of town, and they said, so Orlando has 2 mayors? That's weird. And the other person said, well, that's Orlando. So Now, on its face, it's a little strange, right? And I know there are reasons for it, but like if we want a cohesive identity, maybe that's a place to look at. And there are other things that we're doing to help build that brand. For instance, we're in the Orlando Citrus Bowl, not the Florida Citrus Bowl. If you didn't notice that name change over the past year, that wasn't a mistake. So we're embracing more our Orlando identity and using that label, and that's going to help us move forward. In the Prosperous, we're talking about these ideas of employment and diversification. I've mentioned that already, that there's this challenge. Our main challenge to thriving is our low-wage workforce. Building our prosperity, solid contributors to that, kind of being left out of the thriving story. And so we have to do that, and if we diversify our economy and attract other industries without sort of learning how to sort of do a better job with what we've succeeded at, then we're going to miss the boat. You know, we really are going to miss the boat, because these are the folks who have really helped make us who we are. I mean, not singularly, of course, but they're vital contributors to that, and we need to learn from them. The just and well-ordered. So there's a few subjects there. The top one is everyone's favorite subject of racism, and so you're allowed to laugh when there's a joke and the word racism is in it. And that's one of the ways we're going to start to mature a little bit, is if we learn to talk about this. We are really doing a poor job of talking about this. And we're really feeling the weight of that. We have to learn to grow up, have a conversation about race, and move forward. And one of the big, I spent a lot of time in this community. I was affectionately known as the white guy for a while because I stuck out, and a lot of conversations with people. Our racial history in Orlando is not pretty. It's kind of gone under the radar. There's an opportunity to grow and to learn from that and to move forward, but we can't do that without having conversations. And speaking as a white guy who's just, yet the white people, I will just say this pointedly, a helpful start is to lose the defensiveness and the guilt and listen, right? You don't understand, we don't understand what it's been like, so shut up and listen a little bit. And I'm being pointed so I'll kind of get through, because it's a really entrenched thing. And one of the best ways that we see how to move forward in that is work on something together. If you invite a bunch of people into a room and talk about racism, no one's probably going to show up, and you may not have something profitable to do on the other side of it. But if you say, we're going to get in a room and really address the achievement gap in education that tracks exactly along race lines, we're going to solve that together. And in the midst of that conversation, we're going to take sidebars and talk about the different experiences related to the race of people in the room. Not make that the focus, but take time out to talk about it and then solve the issue together. Last weekend, I was leading a training on serving with dignity. Just so happened the room was half and half, white men, black women. Now, if I'd have said, come out and let's have a conversation about race, that's not who would have shown up, but part of the curriculum is just to talk about it. I can tell you it was one of the more mature conversations I've been around, but it wasn't easy. And at the end of it, we accomplished the goal of the training, which was talking about serving with dignity, but we would broach those very thorny issues of, I see the world totally different than you. How in the world are we going to work together? Well, we can, but we can't without addressing that. And so, as we look at the last three buckets, those are the things I wanted to spend time on. You can see that there's a lot in this profile. And the overarching sentiment is that we are thriving with some of those qualifications I met. We have to figure out some of those issues, and in my view, in order to address this as the sum of past decisions meeting the collective hope for the future, we have to be in some of the same rooms working on the same issue to go to the same place together. And do that strategically, so the right people are in the right place at the right time, and allowing us to learn from that. And so our final question is this: will we fully embrace who we are while expanding our base of talents and ensuring greater opportunity for everyone? I mean, I think the answer, again, to that is yes. So what I encourage you to do is when the final report comes out, to take a look at it, and we're going to find ways to keep this conversation going, to help improve and make our city more of a thriving place, because all the building blocks are there. And it's a wonderful city and a wonderful group of people here, so I'm just delighted to have shared a few thoughts about that. But I'll turn it back over to Eddie. Thank you so much.